Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to join you. Tanya, you can see me and hear me okay?
We can see you. The sound is a little bit broken up, but I don't know if it's at your end or my end.
Yes, it is a little bit broken up.
Yeah, it's broken up here as well.
Okay. Is that a little bit better now?
Yes.
No, we're still on. Yes, wonderful. Thank you very much. Do you want to start now, Tanya, or would you like to just wait? We're still a couple of minutes away. Should we wait a couple more minutes, or?
I think we could just give it 1 minute and then we can get started. We're still actually waiting for one of the speakers, but he is the last speaker, so I think we can start even if we're still waiting for him.
Sure. That's wonderful. Okay. Oh, so good to see everybody today, and sorry I'm popping in at a very last minute today. There's a ESCAP Governing Council meeting on, and we're doing some multitasking today. That's all right.
All our speakers have joined now, Gemma, so if you want to start, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning for those of you. It's so lovely to see you all again, and really very much a pleasure to bring today 3 really great speakers to talk about this topic that everyone is just the thirst for information around. How do we make use of all these non-traditional data sources for official statistics? And we've so far held quite a number of cafes this year on this topic. And today we're focusing specific on economic indicators. Now, economic indicators have been a real focus for all of our agencies for so long. But particularly under COVID-19, there's been a real thirst for not only more indicators, but real-time indicators and indicators in areas of economics that aren't really traditional areas of official statistics either. So today we've brought to you 3 fantastic speakers from literally across the globe. We have from deep south in New Zealand, Gary Dunnett's going to share with you some very exciting developments that have been happening in the Statistics New Zealand and in the New Zealand case. We're then going to fly all the way up to the United Kingdom and hear from Mr. Tom Smith, who's been leading, taking a real leading role in the global working group on big data for official statistics, but also there in the Office of National Statistics. And then we're going to really pleased today that we're going to hear from Madeline Startup from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, because Malaysia, as we all know, have been really doing some exciting things with big data, and really very happy that we have you joining us here today. As part of the conversation, please listen out very carefully to the resources that are available to you here. Not only have we brought you 3 speakers who will share their experience, but you'll also be hearing from Gary in New Zealand about how they're assessing quality of official statistics. And this is an area where I know many of you have been asking ESCAP about how do we understand the quality of the statistics that are being produced using big data. And I'm also very much keen to hear from Tom on the developments with the global data platform, or the global platform that's being developed under the auspices of the United Nations Statistics Commission. So with that extremely brief introduction, again, it's my real pleasure to be with you today. And I know my colleagues are very interested to hear from you, so I won't take up any more of your time. I'm going to hand back to you, Tanya, to do some housekeeping and lead the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gemma. I would just like to remind everyone that if you're not speaking, please put your microphone on mute, because otherwise we'll get all this funny background noise. And also, if you have any questions for the speakers during the presentations or after, we'll be using the chat box. So please use the chat box for any questions you might have. And that's actually all I have to say now. I will leave the floor to Irina, who will be leading the inputs today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you, Tanya. Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure for me to be moderating this Stats Cafe on improving economic indicators with big data. Today's session is structured in the following way. First, we'll hear from Ms. Mazliana Mustafa from Department of Statistics Malaysia. Then we'll move to Gary Dunnett from Statistics New Zealand, and then to Tom Smith from the Data Science Campus of the ONS. In between each presentation, we will take 1 to 2 clarifying questions if they arise. And then after the presentations, we will move to the general Q&A. Participants are encouraged to type their questions in the chat box. Also, I would like to inform our participants that this session is recorded and will be shared on ESCAP's Stats Cafe's webpage, where you can also find all the previous presentations. Without further ado, we will move to the presentations. Our first speaker is Ms. Mazliana Mustafa. Ms. Mazliana is currently a Principal Assistant Director of Core Team Big Data Analytics, leading price intelligence at Stats BDA at the Department of Statistics Malaysia. Ms. Mazliana was involved in compiling Producer Price Index and Services Producer Price Index from 2005 to 2011. And most recently, she was also involved in the special survey effects of COVID-19 on the economy and individual. Over to you, Ms. Mazliana.
Thank you, Ms. Irina. Assalamualaikum to my Muslim colleagues, Ms. Tanya for the welcoming remarks, and other families, Mr. Gary and Mr. Tom, and also Ms. Irina, our organizer, and all participants. It is my pleasure to be a panelist for these sessions. I'm Mazliana Mustafa from Department of Statistics Malaysia, which is focusing on from the Core Team Big Data Analytic Divisions. Today, I will present on the topic entitled Leveraging Online Price Data from the Web Crawling. Online price data is more focusing on the urban price data collection, as we all know that CPI collected both, which is urban and rural data collection. Yeah. Wait. Boleh dengar? Wait, got technical issue. Okay. Okay, the first slide on the introductions. What is a price intelligence? Price intelligence is actually we leverages the capability of big data in collecting large data from various sources and transform them into a better structure. That means we transform the unstructured data into the structured data to perform price analysis. And then from the price intelligence, which is a sub-module of TED BDA analytic, it's actually compilation of different prices for the same good, which is we can obtain from the various website, which providing a modernized price collections. And then for the price intelligence, actually it's combined both technique, which is a web crawler and web scraping. What is the differences between the web crawler and web scraping? The web crawler is the process of repetitively finding and fetching hyperlinks starting from a list of starting URLs. Meanwhile, the web scraping is focusing on the automatically retrieving and processing information from the website. As you can see in the slide, from the figure on the red one, we can see the crawler actually visit the all links in the website, and then they build the list and then indexing and then store in the database. The famous example for web crawler is Google or Bing. Meanwhile, for the web scraping is is we using the web scraper, which is we extract the exact information from the website and we transform into the structured data for it in different formats such as XML, SQL, and Excel data. Okay. Big data analytic journey. The journey on the big data analytic endorsement began in 2014 at the inception meeting in Colombo, Sri Lanka, which is organized by the Asian Development Bank, ADB. In September 2015, a seminar on integrated trade database with Malaysia Statistical Business Register, MSBR, were held. This has initiated the StatBA project, which is focusing on the TEC, which is Trade by Enterprise Characteristic, which is handle massive amount of trade data using a big data platform. This project expands into a unstructured data, which is PI, price intelligence, and PMOS, which is on the sentiment, focusing on the news headline. And then the project StatBA actually this kicks off on December 2016 and completed in May 2018. Okay. The objective of the price intelligence, it has two objectives. The first one is to give better insight in consumer price analysis and price monitoring. And then the second one is to establish a new price basket analysis, which will be used as a value added to the current consumer price index. And then there is a new data collection as compared to before this, we're using a traditional approach, which is we have to collect the data through the supermarket and hypermarket. From the value creation, it has three value creation in the price intelligence. The first one is a new data collection methodology, and then the second one is a holistic view in online and offline prices, and lastly is the transformation of business process. As overall, the PI is actually improved on the price data quality, and it enables citizens to rank better to increasing amount of data sources on the internet. And also, using price intelligence, we can reduce the respondent burden. That's mean we just collect the data from the website. Price intelligence. Price intelligence consists a few analysis of few method. That the first one is modernization on data collection tools, which is we adopt on the web scraping technique, which is more popular right now. And then for the automated process, we use a web crawler. And then we use web scraping to extract the information from the website, and the data is gathered and we copy it from the website and transform into structured data, which is we can perform the price data analysis. For the data retrieval and analysis, we can discover what is the unknown pattern in data, and then what is the relationship that can be used for prediction on user relevant quantiles. Okay, the architecture of price intelligence actually is managing on massive data, data management and repository. From this slide, we can see the unstructured data, which is we can get from the online retail platform. For example, Tesco, MyMoto, these all are the retailer website in Malaysia. And also the structured data is exiting system from our in-house system, which is called a SIHP, SIHP. And then the unstructured data and the structured data will be combined together into data consolidation into the price lake. From the price lake, the data set will be using analytic to visualize the output of the price. We can see and facilitate for the better decision making. For the selected item, actually we map into our COI corp with 153 COI corp, because we know from the website the price data application is very specific and very broad, and then we map into our system to get the exact or partial match of the data set. This is the module in the price intelligence, data acquisition, price lake development, data analysis, and data visualization. Data acquisition is collect and extract data from various sources, both internal and external, which I mentioned earlier. And then for the price lake development is store and structure massive data within a huge amount of data. From the data analysis is focusing on the descriptive statistic, data explorations, comparisons, statistic or comparison price data, and also on dependency analysis. For the last one, which is data visualization, is the one that we make sense of the data. From the visualization, we can make whether the we can see in a simple way, is it the data, is it applicable, or is it good for our data set? In the process of price data development, we also doing the matching or mapping with our COICOP dictionary. That's mean in the submodule of price intelligence, there is a COICOP dictionary to be mapped into our online price data. Okay. Data management in the PI dictionary. In PI dictionary, item specification were mapped into our 4-digit code COICOP. And then from the screen, we can see that 4-digit COICOP is analyzed whether it pending or accept to match by the COICOP 4-digit by the system. Next, the PI dictionary also can perform analysis on matching item specification, either it partially or exact match with the Malaysia COICOP. COICOP is referring to Malaysia COICOP, because we all know in UNSD is providing on the COICOP, which is now the latest one is COICOP 2018. Within the PI submodule in PI dictionary, it can manage to show what is the most appear word in the item description. As shown in the slide, the iPhone is the most appear word in the PI dictionary. This submodule also is to monitor the mapping result within COICOP, whether it's partially or exactly matched. And then from the result, we can see that only 11.3% are exact match. Meanwhile, the 88.7% is partially matched. This information is based on 231 items specification updates in PI dictionary. Okay, next we move to the text matching scoring. Text matching scoring is used on given the scoring value to the system. Item specification which meet the requirement of the CPI basket item, which is mapped to 7-digit item specification M COICOP, with the high scoring value we return to the exact match. It means if you have a high scoring value, it will return the result is exact match, which is a match type is exact. For example, 121312, which is diapers Huggies dry, M72 pieces, is a 7-digit M COICOP. It's written the result as exact match. This means we can get the item specification from the online price data. Okay, for example, for the broad specifications, which is written to 6-digit code, as long it has the same brand name or units, it considered as a partial match. Okay. PI dictionary has been built in order to get the best matching with the M Malaysia COICOP, 6 or 7 digit based on the description of the item using our text matching scoring. And then, for example, diapers for baby, for description you can see from the slide. The sample keyword is like baby diapers, diapers, and also it include the brand of the diapers like such as Mami Poco, Genki, Huggies, and so on. And also the dictionary will be updated regularly based on the basket of goods in the CPI. This is our data set generator. This data set generator is used for our user which want to download the data set. Because the price data actually we getting extract information from the website and we store in our database. If the user want to download the data, they have to log in into our data set generator, and then they can choose which item or specification they want to download, and it can download with a specific date and specific product, download into a CSV format. So the data set will be used for the research paper and so on.
Ms. Mazliana, if you could wrap up in the next 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay. We have a price intelligence statistic which is consists of trend, descriptive, price basket enrichment, and also we also have a dependency analysis. During the pandemic COVID-19, we're also using the data set from the airline, from the website, and then we are used in our compilation of the CPI. Both below is the item specification route, like Kedah to Kuala Lumpur, route that we choose for choosing from online price data. And then we also using, because the MCO, the movement control order, we also collect the data set from the website for the 20 main product, because the price data collection in Malaysia has been suspended. So we are using the web crawler from the current retailer website. Okay. We also use the house rental data from the online for our international comparison program for the submission. As we compare to our rent survey, it shows that 45.6% from we submitted for our housing rental data. The limitation of web crawler or web scraping is we need to update the crawler, and then we have a bunch of crawler from different sites, because the structure of website change frequently, and it also involve the legal issue. Regarding to the web scraping app crawler, it has a storage limitation, and then we must make sure that the data is publicly available, and we must avoid the private or protected by copyrights and other laws. And last one, we have to check the website robot.tsc.file, which is this robot is designed to, the robot TST actually, what you call that? Wait, Robot TSC is the text file, which is the instruction for search engine crawlers, and it defines which area of a website crawler are allowed to search. And the last one, we have doing a research paper using our web scraping data. There are three research papers regarding to the web scraping. The first one is forecasting prices of fish and vegetable using web scrap by price microdata, which is done by me. Second one is from my colleague, which is online and offline prices, measuring selected home appliance products. And the last one, the third one is analysis on the mobile phone prices Malaysia using web scrap Malaysia from Miss Nurhuda. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Masliana, for such an insightful presentation, particularly on the technical aspects of web scraping and web crawling, but also for the numerous limitations that this method has. It's also very interesting to see that the Department of Statistics of Malaysia is developing its in-house capacity for using big data for price statistics. We have not received any clarification questions, so we will move now to the next speaker, Gary Dannett. Gary is currently Deputy Chief Methodologist at Statistics New Zealand. Gary has more than 30 years experience as an official statistician in most areas of the Statistical Office, and has not only worked in Statistics New Zealand, but also CSO Ireland and Australian Bureau of Statistics. Over to you, Gary.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I will just try and share my content. Is it coming through? Okay, so today I'm going to, is that all right? Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay, so today I'm just going to talk a bit about our vision that we've had for the use of big data across our economic statistics for a period. I'll also give you some examples of what we've done, both past and present, and also I'll just talk about some of the issues that we've faced along the way. So our vision we've had a vision to transform our collection and production of statistics with the idea that we would actually use administrative data for our primary source for some time. When we thought about this vision, and I must admit that it is nearly 10 years old, we felt that we would see some reduction in respondent burden, improvement in quality, some flexibility, scalability, and also provision of unit record data. So we've been on this journey, as I said, for a little while. So when we first started back in prior to 2001, we were like a largely traditional statistical office with full coverage stratum, and then also having sample surveys, running sample stratum underneath. Then through 2001 to 2015, we actually started to use much more administrative data. And our first administrative data that we used was what we call goods and services tax, which is sort of like a VAT that you might have in the UK, but that's through the tax office. But we still predominantly had full coverage and sample. But over where we've moved to now is that we have what we call a managed collection and then administrative data for the bulk of our collection. So this is in our business statistics primarily. So our managed collection is actually a targeted collection from where we can't get good administrative data. So in our managed collection, we might have about 300 firms, where in the past we've had 15, 16,000 firms. So it's very targeted, and it is solely for those firms that we can't get administrative data. Primarily, those firms are large firms, but for some sectors such as like the screen industry, computing industry, we actually can't get good administrative data just because of their structures. So we do have some small firms in our managed collection. So sort of what administrative data are we and big data are we talking about? So this is a sort of a summary of the sort of data that we're talking about. So I've talked a little bit about our tax data, but we also have migration cards, births and deaths, credit cards, internet supply, central bank data, scanner data, mobile phone data, energy generation, cruise and flight manifests. And we're currently working on bringing forward work around our satellite imagery, and I must admit I've sat through a few cafe series, the ESCAP cafe series, and I've been very jealous of what I've seen across some of the Asia Pacific region and the use of satellite imagery. So we hope to enter into that party soon. Also in New Zealand, we have some animal tags inside the ears of animals that we hope to use. And also we want to exploit greater use of our integrated data environment and our longitudinal business data to actually use much more sort of micro data in our economic measures. So we have really realised some benefits from what we originally put out as a vision and design. So we have seen 50% respondent reduction in our load across some of our sectors. We have been able to produce information on every business because we've been able to get hold of tax data and then with our managed collection as well. We've seen flexibility, so we've been able to produce subdomain estimates where we've never been able to do that in the past. And likewise, we've produced scalability, so we've produced some new statistics and new services of our financial sectors, but I'll give some examples of that later. And we also have seen some greater potential in our micro space. So I'll just give you some sort of examples of where we're seeing that at the moment. So if we actually look at some of our industry surveys, we've actually seen 50% reduction in our sample size for our manufacturing sector, 40% across our wholesale, 90% in our retail trade data survey, and also through our services sector, we've seen 60% respondent burden load. And also what's been quite interesting is that we've actually been able to bring all our tax data through into one system, and so all our surveys, all our sort of industry sector statistics can actually be produced off one processing and analysis system. So if you sort of think that our tax data comes into a sort of a data warehouse, and then we can add in the survey data that we have, and then we can actually run all our processing and imputation through our single system. So that actually has given us huge benefit as well, so that we've been able to manage going forward where we've had changes in our sample surveys and our processing systems, or if we want to change imputation methodologies, we can actually do that really, really easily. This is an example of some new statistics that we've been able to produce in the past. So what this is showing is that so in Kaikoura, which is in the centre of the northern part of the South Island, there was an earthquake in November 2016, and what we were able to do was actually show where there were more sales after the quake. So what we saw was where people had actually left the Kaikoura region and also down towards Christchurch, where they'd actually left the region and they've actually moved up into Nelson or over to the coast. And so what this shows is actually gives us some insights into where people have dispersed to following the earthquake, and also down through the east coast of the North Island is a main arterial route, for travel. And so what this is showing is actually the load that's gone across different routes across New Zealand. So this is starting to give some sort of real insights into sort of dispersional effects following major catastrophes. In the pricing space, we've actually been using scanner data for a little while. So we're actually using sort of data through our food price indexes, and we're currently in discussions with department stores and homeware stores and electrical stores. So we are using third party. We are looking at web scrape data for some of our larger sites. But we've found that we actually need some in-house capability, so we're doing that a little bit later. I suppose the key for our use of scanner data and also web scrape data is about the relationship management, and I'll come to that shortly. One example, another good example we've been doing is electronic card transactions, where we've actually brought together a couple of suppliers of electronic cards, one Paymart and one ANZ, which is a bank in New Zealand. We're receiving the data on the 2nd or the 3rd working day of the following month, and we're publishing it 7 days later. And so that's actually giving us some really real-time data of where the electronic transactions go. So that's actually very sort of starting to replace our retail trade survey. Now, what's also been interesting on that is that we've actually built on top of that. So we're actually producing some cruise expenditure data. So what we've actually been doing is we've been looking at the schedules of the cruise ships. We've been getting some manifests of the passengers and the crew, and we've been using the credit card data that we've previously had, which I just talked about a little bit before. And so what we can actually show is we can actually match the credit card transaction with the ship manifests and the cruise schedules, and we can actually identify how when cruise boats go into towns, how much spend is actually going through those towns, and so that's sort of for a small town, that's actually quite a significant income, and they really want to know, is it worth putting on special trips and all that sort of thing. And what they're actually finding is that they are very, it's giving them great insight into the economic benefits of cruise ships. And what we're seeing this being used for as well is that some local councils are actually putting forward requests to government, for example, to dredge their harbour so they can take bigger boats and all this sort of information. So I think there's some real, local area knowledge being gained from this data. Another piece of information, is that we've been using some cell phone data, and our data ventures part of Statistics New Zealand has been doing this great well, and they've sort of negotiated access to cell phone data. Now, what this is showing is that you'll see in Queens Street and Wellington, so Queen Street's in Auckland and Wellington Central, pretty regular pattern for 5 days of very high cell phone use as people come into town. But this is over the Christmas period. and you'll actually see that in the latter part of the month, everyone leaves Wellington for Christmas. No one wants to stay in Wellington for Christmas. So that's sort of a huge drop off. But you'll see that there's a bit of a, there is a big drop off in Queen Street in Auckland, but not as bad as in Wellington. But then you'll see a huge spike at the end, which is our New Year's celebration. So everyone comes in for the fireworks display. So that's sort of, and if you're thinking about how businesses, how they should sort of manage their focus, when they should invest, should they have staff in the weekend, and that this is hugely valuable data for them.
Gary, if you could wrap up in the next 2 minutes, please.
I will, yes. And then this is some near real-time indicators that we have, which we've been delivering from COVID. So these are a number of indicators that we have, 8 indicators that we've brought together. Clearly, there was a desire for economic knowledge, and things like GDP and that were a little bit too slow, or were very slow, considered slow. So we've actually produced an indicator. These are the indicator series themselves. We've put through a sort of a principal component analysis, and that's given us the New Zealand Activity Index. When we overlay that with GDP, real GDP, it actually shows a pretty good relationship there. And then finally, we've actually been doing some natural language programming with machine language of news media, of actually showing us some sentiments, how happy people are, and that sort of indicator we've been doing. So some of our challenges, over sort of breaking down some of our silos, some of our traditional thinking. Interestingly, that often people think that direct data collected is gold standard. I actually would like to challenge that, because you've got to realise that sample surveys are a proxy for a real world event, and so is admin data. Which one's better? Don't know. We need to think about that. But I suppose the key point is that you need to be able to think at a conceptual level and understand how the data is applying to the concept that you're trying to measure. And that for a lot of people, that's a real challenge, especially if they've sort of been pretty tied to their statistics for years. And we've produced a data quality framework, which actually helps us understand how to best manage our data, which approach should we take, and whether we should actually use other surveys or whether we can actually do some modelling behind it. And then these are our final challenges. But I think the key thing there is that actually having a good relationship with our admin data providers is key. And then so that if you have a really good relationship, you don't use your legislation, but use a relationship to manage it. That's the best way to make best use of admin data. There we go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Gary, sharing these very interesting and insightful examples of how you use specifically text data, but also electronic card transactions and cell phone data in the production of official statistics. I hope we go back to the issue of relationship building with the private companies and how can NSOs establish good relationships to get access to big data from the private sector in our Q&A and discussion section. We do not have a clarifying, yes, we do have one clarifying question from the next speaker, Tom. I suggest we go back to it in the Q&A. And now I would like to invite Tom to present. Tom is the Managing Director at the Data Science Campus, joining the Office for National Statistics in 2017. He was previously co-founder and chief executive of Oxford Consultants for Social Inclusion. Tom has more than 20 years of experience using data and analysis to improve public services. And among his other roles, Tom is currently chief of the advisory board to the United Nations Global Platform for Big Data and Official Statistics, member of council for the UK Royal Statistics Society, and a member of the Open Data User Group Ministerial Advisory Group to Cabinet Office. Over to you, Tom. And thank you so much for joining us so early.
Great, thanks, Arina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Fabulous.
And we can see your slide up.
Excellent. Great. Well, I hope that this will follow on from Gary's presentation and the excellent prices work that we saw earlier. But I wanted to give a really quick flavour of some of the work going on in the UK around big data and faster indicators. And then, as Arena just kind of alluded to, the commercial collaboration. So really some of the things that we've learnt about accessing and using data that's held and generated by commercial organizations and some of the ways that you collaborate with those groups. So I'll flick through. For those of you who don't know the work at the ONS in the UK, I lead the data science campus. This is a directorate within the National Stats Organization that was set up coming up for 4 years ago now. We launched really with the aim of strengthening the official statistics and outputs that parts of ONS are producing around particularly economy that we're going to look at here, particularly also population statistics and so on, and some of the similar examples to Gary has just shown. We really have kind of a number of programs, but the one I'm going to talk to right now is what we call faster indicators. And the kind of starting point here, which all of us will be really familiar with, is that there's a huge pressure on stats organizations to produce faster data analysis, really to help decision makers in real time, if that's possible, or certainly less of the rear view mirror that particularly stats agencies are sometimes accused of. Things like COVID and the changes to the economy and changes to population and sort of movement happening very quickly on a matter of hours, that sort of thing puts a real challenge for us to say, what data do we have access to, what analysis can we produce that can really give people an insight into something when we're making decisions maybe this afternoon about something significant like a country going into lockdown. So the faster economic indicators program we've been running for a couple of years now essentially asks the question of pretty much any data source we come across, can we use this in a way that will tell us something useful about the economy or about movement and so on? And I just want to give a few examples of the data sources that we're using here, and I'll flag them up, but they're often around movement, but they're also around credit card and spend, the sorts of examples we just heard about. And they also can bring in some quite interesting other data sources as well, and I'll just touch on a couple of those. So I'll flick through. So the starting point for this program was from the 2008 recession. And here, the challenge for the statistics agencies were, at what stage were we able to say through our official statistics, our official outputs, that we were heading into a significant recession? And that really is about supporting the levers, the policy and the decisions that other parts of government can make. For example, opening up credit lines to companies, reducing interest rates and so on, things like that. And there were costs that we identified through not being able to put out rapid indicators that showed a recession was happening. And in the UK's case, and other countries will have similar, sort of big impacts for significant economic shocks. But the estimates that we came up with were that we lost something like £1 billion per week that we were not able to identify through our official statistics and give the evidence to for example, particularly the central bank in changing interest rates and opening up credit lines. So that's a really significant program. If you think about the value of data and the value of statistics, that for me is just a hugely important bit of evidence. So what we've been doing since then is obviously, like others, looking at all of the data sources that we have. In the UK, VAT business tax is a very interesting and useful indicator, and one of the first pieces of work that the campus looked at was producing monthly, very rapid, so sort of T minus just a very small number of days, diffusion indices, so looking at simple measures on change, coming out monthly and quarterly, and then seeing those to see whether they can flag up and identify recessions or big significant turning points in advance of some of the official outputs. The evidence is that this would have showed very quickly the sorts of moves that we were seeing in 2008. And indeed, we've seen impacts coming up over the COVID period quite significantly. But lots of other data sources as well. And obviously people here are interested in big data or non-traditional data sources. I'm not quite sure what big data is. It's often seen as something that's slightly too big for an Excel spreadsheet. But I think at the moment, I'm interested on this. Anything that's non-traditional, it's defined or generated through other processes other than, say, survey or administrative data. So one of the things here is around movement around the UK. We have something like 10,000 road traffic sensors. These update every couple of minutes. They give you vehicle length. So you can, for example, look at the movement of trucks around the country, and you can look particularly at things like trucks near ports, so coming in for import and export, and there's some really interesting signals that come out of that. So that road traffic data we've been analysing and collecting now for some time, and producing a weekly and a monthly time series on the back of this. Similarly, for the UK, imports and exports, highly important through shipping. So we use the automated information system, the AIS data. This is collected globally by various commercial providers. And one of the things here is that you can access this and analyze it, obviously nearly in real time, but you can then repeat that analysis in different areas. So Gemma at the beginning mentioned the UN Global Platform. This is a program that we piloted in the ONS in the UK, and then have handed over to UN Stats Division in summer to support analysis by NSOs globally. One of the data sources on the platform or available through the platform is this AIS data, and there are methods that you can use to essentially run the analysis in your own areas or places of interest. So what you've got here again is a very high frequency, very timely, so small lag data source that does give you some really interesting patterns and analysis of what's happening with ships coming in and out, and then impact, and using that as a proxy, if you like, for imports and exports and other related variables. So we've been publishing again this AIS data now on a weekly basis for about a year, and this is seen as one of the key sets of faster indicators that ONS publishes in the UK for the COVID analysis and work. So again, part of a package, a bundle of faster indicators that are published out. There are some kind of more exploratory data sources as well, and I kind of wanted to flag this one up because I know people are interested in image data. One of the things we've been looking at through COVID particularly is how busy our high streets are, cars and pedestrians, bicyclists and so on. Lots of sources you can use for that. We've heard about telco, mobile data from telcos, seen sort of in New Zealand, but you can use similar data from open source traffic cameras. They're not high enough resolution to identify people, as in faces. They're not high enough resolution to identify car registrations, but you can use them to count and produce statistics. So for the last few months, we've been producing these on a daily or an hourly basis, and they correlate, they work very well with other measures for mobility, but they're highly timely, and obviously you've got quite a long time series. The methods that we produced here and tested are open source, and you can reuse on any traffic cameras, essentially, of which there are lots and lots. So we're working with local authorities and others. So there's kind of a great range of data sources around mobility. I also wanted to flag up the work on aerial imagery and satellite imagery. So 2 examples here related to the economy. They're not about the faster indicators, or they could be, but related to the economy through obviously natural capital measures. So some way that you're trying to assess the value of the environment for your bottom line, if you like. So to include that into your measures of the economy and society at a national level. One of the areas we've been looking in the UK is using aerial photography to look at gardens, so green space that's not necessarily well captured by other statistics and other measures. And we can do this reasonably accurately for a number of image analysis routines that you apply to quite high resolution aerial photography. So lots there. I should have put links onto this one, but I'll put links on, share them afterwards. Final one on aerial photography and examples. Last week we published analysis of the using satellite imagery for an SDG indicator, a Sustainable Development Goal indicator, and this is in the change and the extent of water-related ecosystems over time. So basically producing a back series of water availability, and you can use this. We've quality assessed and validated this data, and looked at permanent water versus seasonal, and also then published our results from how we've assessed this big data source. So lots of things you need to do in order to understand the quality of the data sources in exactly the way that we would do traditionally for our survey analysis, our administrative data and others. And this for us is kind of a really interesting and important next step that we go to, as well as just developing statistics and looking at things like correlations and saying, well, okay, they're showing something interesting. It's really getting very, very detailed look at the quality of the source, coverage, representativeness, and so on. So those are a few examples. Gemma at the beginning just sort of alluded to the being interested in the lessons that we've learned about commercial collaborations. And I'll just sort of say a couple of the things on this and then leave some time for questions. Not all of the sources and examples that I just gave were through commercial collaborations, but many of them are. And what we've learned is that getting it right in terms of a collaboration and partnership with commercial organizations is difficult. It takes time. Data access and availability takes time. All of that requires trust and a relationship building and so on. And I've just kind of summarized maybe 4 of the points here. And the first one is something I call win by multiple means. And this is be prepared to be flexible. Some organizations, commercial organizations, will be looking to sell their data. Others might be looking for a public good impact or work with you in order to show a basic support for regulation and so on, or support for your government policy and delivery in a way that really emphasizes the value of their data for public good. So there is some being flexible on what you're expecting out of commercial arrangements. Don't assume that they're necessarily looking for cash up front. They may be interested in all sorts of things. Data access is always going to be kind of one of those areas that's really important to us. But again, be prepared to be flexible on that. It may be that we want to put in secondments and actually put an analyst or 2 into the commercial partners team. It may be that they can provide you aggregated data straight out. It may be that they can provide you the raw data. All of those things may be possible, but again, be prepared to be flexible. And similarly, partnerships. People may not be looking for a commercial relationship with the National Stats Agency. They may be interested in a real partnership and a collaboration that they can use to sort of showcase some of the value of what they're doing. So that kind of win by multiple means, prepared to be flexible. But the second thing is to coordinate your activity. And one of the lessons we learned in ONS is that multiple contacts between ONS and the commercial organizations are really confusing. Your economics team might be in contact with, for example, mobile telephone companies. Similarly, your population and your migration teams might be, your big data team. There could be lots and lots of connections across. That's really confusing to commercial organizations. So it really helps to have single points of contact where you can kind of funnel some of those connections through. And related to that, get your material ready. Commercial organizations are really careful, and understandably and rightly so, about the sensitivity of their data. So they really want to know up front what legal gateways they have for sharing, how they can share that data. And actually to do so, to have material ready that you can provide to them, makes you look professional, really kind of helps alleviate concerns at their end, particularly from a legal and a senior decision maker's side. The third point is it's collaboration. We're not always looking to purchase or buy or license data. So be prepared to kind of build those relationships, understand what they're looking for, the sort of user needs on their side, and how their decision-making process is going. So they're having, a single point of contact can be really helpful for that. And then the final one is minimizing access to sensitive data. And I'd be really interested in the experiences from colleagues on the line, we found that if you can simplify that data access wherever possible, it really helps. So starting with the concept of we will bring your data into our organization, that's not necessarily the best way of doing it, because actually what you find is that many commercial organizations have difficulty with that. There's clearly understandable sort of challenges with the data access, and there may be better models where, for example, you don't necessarily need the sensitive raw data, the microdata. It could be that we could do analysis on their own platforms. So a few lessons there. Just finish very quickly with a couple of case studies. Is with Barclays, which is a UK financial organisation. About a third of all credit card payments in the country go through Barclays. So when we now access their data originally through secondments from ONS into Barclays, and now through essentially standard pipelines that have been generated. Those outputs are shared with government decision makers in the UK. They're not published, although we're still working on that one, but they're seen very much as a partnership between Barclays and ONS, as well as the weekly data and outputs there. It also supports our work on looking at international passenger survey and other outputs that have been difficult to operate at the moment. We make all of these public as soon as we can. So, for example, I've just put a link up there on the Payments Data for Public Good program. That's one of the things that we try to do. But again, coming back to the previous points, your commercial partners may not want to go public. So you'll have to explore that with them. Second case study, working with Telefonica O2 mobile data. It's one of the big providers in the UK and elsewhere. And again, using this for a weekly data feed to support internal decision makers. Again, we are not yet publishing this data as outputs. We're using this internally in government, but it's providing very valuable additional insight on the economic perspective and on COVID-19 understanding. So again, we're looking to move towards a situation where we do publish those, but the collaboration, the agreements that we have with O2 mean that we can access the data through their systems, we can produce analysis indicators, but we can't yet publish those out, but we're moving to that. So 2 case studies, talked through quite a lot of things. I'll pause there and hand back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, for such an insightful presentation with so many interesting and relevant examples. I particularly liked how you put a price tag on the cost of not releasing timely information, which comes to billions and billions of pounds. The specific examples of using VAT data, road traffic sensors, AES data, gem scams, and you mentioned the methods are open source, so I hope other NSOs could access them to see whether they could use their data to good use. Also examples of satellite imagery, but most importantly, the learnings from the ONS about the partnerships and different models of partnerships with the private sector and how NSOs should be looking at these partnerships with different companies rather than one method fits all, understand what each individual company is for. And as you, Tom, mentioned, they're not all for commercial gains, and some actually want partnership and more than money from this. The presentations were so interesting, but unfortunately we're running out of time. However, we will take a few more minutes, and I would like to ask all of our speakers just 2 questions. How do you ensure quality when you are mixing big data or alternative sources of data from the private sector and administrative data? And also, how do you deal with privacy issues when accessing third-party data? So if we could start with Ms. Mazliana, and then Gary, and then Tom, that would be great. Ms. Mazliana, would you like to share your insights on bringing together web scrape data and administrative data, and what have been some quality issues related to that work?
Okay, I would like to share the experience in the DOSM for the scanner data. Before this, DOSM has approached a number of retailers and proposed them to use a scanner data, which is we get from the supermarket or hypermarket. But unfortunately, the selected retailers are unwilling to share their scanner data. For example, retailer one actually almost agreed to sign an agreement on the data sharing. But when the CEO of the retailer one has been transferred, the new CEO quite reluctant to share the data due to the business confidentiality issue. It's also happened to the other retailers. For the first step, they want to agree, but to agree to share on the aggregated data, but later they decline to share on the data sharing. And also for the retailer 3, they refuse to provide any feedback on the scanner data. That's why we are focusing on the web scraping to get the information on price data from the website. On the privacy issue, actually, I want to focus on the legal issue on the web scraping. Actually, this issue is it's been a grey area, which is illegal or legal. We can scrape the data from the website. Basically, on the retailer website, we can see the term and services mentioned on the intellectual property clause. The content of website is something is like that, protected by copyright, trademarks, database on other intellectual property. That means you cannot produce or republish the data from the website without permission, without written permission from the Tesco website. Then this clause has hindered the progress of a web scraping project. So our suggestion, our way forward is to engage with the website owner and then get the written permission from the website owner, and the last one, get an official API, which is an application programming interface to avoid this legal issue. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Masliana. Gary, over to you.
Well, I've got a suspicion I might sound a little bit what Tom said a little bit before. If I look at an example of our telco data, and that it's about the relationship that we have with the telecom providers, and what we've done is, as Tom mentioned, it's not about a purchase agreement; it's about a relationship. And also the telcos, they actually want some aspect of public good, but also they want something out of the relationship. And so we've actually sat down and worked with them and understood their needs. And for a lot of them, they actually just want to know what sort of market share they have. And without access or ability to analyze their competitors' data in a safe environment, they can't get a good picture of that. So that's the relationship that we bring to the table is that as a safe custodian of data, applying highly accurate, confidentialization methods with a good pedigree of national stats, we can actually bring together the data. And what we've done is we've actually worked with the telcos. So we've put people inside the telco shops and produce aggregates in the telco environment, and then they ship aggregates to us, or micro aggregates that we bring together, and that gives the complete picture. Now, through the whole exercise, though, is that we work with our privacy commissioner, and we publish on a privacy impacts assessment on our website. And when we started to produce some of this data, there was a few people said, "Oh, but you'll be able to track me." We go, "No, because we don't get individual data. We get aggregate data." And our privacy commissioner actually came out and supported us and said, "No, Stats NZ is not getting micro data." So we've got a very good relationship with our privacy commissioner and also with those telcos. I suppose, and just one final point, statistics officers have an amazing pedigree that I don't think we realise around classification and data management and information management and not in conceptual alignment. A lot of companies, and we're finding this with telcos and with admin data suppliers, they don't have such a strong pedigree. So telcos have 16 different ways to classify its customer, where we actually manage classifications just part of our bread and butter. And so if we bring that to the party, that's where we can add value to that relationship. And that's what we're finding, is that we can enter into easy relationships with people. There we go.
And did you, how long did it take you to negotiate with the mobile operators? And have you managed to get all of them on board?
So it took us probably about a year, but they were our first sort of engagement. So now we're getting a lot slicker, and we haven't got all of them, but we don't need them all. We've got enough to be, to provide real value to the other providers.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. And Tom, would you like to add something on the privacy aspect and data quality management?
Great, thanks. I mean, +1 to everything that Masliana and Gary have just said. So to imagine I've said all that as well again, but they put it very well, I think. So maybe a couple of extra points. The first is that time series are really important. And I think maybe 2 points here. The first one, where we are bringing data in from commercial organizations over time, or any external organization, clearly the fact that we don't control that data is a challenge. But it then comes back to the same point that Gary made, is that there's an enormous amount of methodological expertise within stats agencies, which it's easy for us to take for granted. But that methodological expertise can help and help, for example, the telco companies or other organizations to see what impact their data collection, their data definitions and processing is having on the time series and quality there, because they're also interested in that data and that quality of that data. So that's kind of one thing, is time series are really important. And I think as we go on and we get more experience of reusing data sources in this way over time, we'll get a bit better and a bit slicker at understanding where the problems come in. But the other point on time series is we're in a position right now where there are effectively breaks in a lot of our series for all sorts of reasons around not being able to collect the data, or because actually sectors of the economy have effectively shut down. So there are pretty significant breaks. So that kind of gives us an opportunity as well to start thinking about, well, is that the best way of collecting or trying to answer the question that we're really interested in here? So it gives us a bit of an opportunity to test, where we could bring in external sources to replace some of our ongoing and previous sides. So that's one. That's on sort of the time series. Quality of data was a really interesting question. Personally, I think it's quite an easy one. We just have to apply the same types of quality criteria and threshold that we do for administrative data when we're talking about data coming in from externals. It's data that's essentially generated by processes other than our data collection interests. So we have to really understand what those processes are and apply the same sorts of statistics quality criteria that we all have in our organizations. The UK has code of practice for stats, others have very similar models as well. One final one, the ethical aspect. I think it's really, really powerful when the statistics agencies go public with their approach to using data. Gary's example of the confidentiality and the information officer, we have a similar sort of relationship, plus we have the stats regulation group, and we have something called the National Statisticians Data Ethics Committee. All of those are public groups who report very openly and essentially challenge on bad use of statistics and highlight where and why we're using statistics or data from mobile agencies and others. So I think it's super important that when we get into this position where we're bringing in or analysing, assessing data from potentially very sensitive areas like financial transactions, credit cards, mobile phones, and so on, that all of us as individuals, as citizens, are affected by. It's super important that we go very public on what we're doing, and demonstrate and showcase that work and the value. So that for me is probably the most important thing. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you very much to all of you for your insightful thoughts on this subject. And my takeaways from this session is that access and legal frameworks still remain a challenge, But the NSOs, when it comes to accessing alternative sources of data, had something to offer to these companies through new partnerships models that go beyond just commercial agreements. And of course, as Tom mentioned, NSOs should apply the same quality controls on the alternative sources of data as to the traditional statistics productions. And ethics is a very important issue that should be considered when producing insights from personal data or aggregated data, and NSOs should be transparent on how they analyze this data so that the public is well aware and educated on the potential, but also around the privacy concerns. Thank you very much to all of you, and I would like to now hand over to Tanya for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Liana. Thank you so much, Ms. Liana and Gary and Tom. That was a really, really interesting Stats Cafe, and we've gone over time, but we just couldn't stop you. It was way too interesting. My key takeaways from this is really that you've all been on a journey, and you're still on a journey. You know, it's not a quick solution, it's not a quick moving into these new data sources. It's you're experimenting a lot and you're trying new things, and I find that really inspiring. And I'm sure we've had more than 100 people listening in today, so I'm sure they've also learned a lot and been really inspired by your journeys. Of course, this important role of partnerships have been highlighted multiple times, and it's really exciting to see that that's also some of your key takeaways. We are also really learning at ESCAP, and we are trying to see how we can best try and support this important work in Asia and the Pacific. And over the next few months, we'll be releasing some knowledge briefs outlining a lot of these experiences that have happened in Asia and the Pacific, and we're really looking forward to sharing those with you. I think right now we're really at the stage where we're all learning from each other, and it's really wonderful that you're willing to share your experiences like this. I also just wanted to mention that we also have a Stats Cafe next week. It's on a completely different topic. It's on refugee. It's called Reaching Refugee Populations Through Official Statistics. So it's on refugee statistics. And I also hope to see many of you there next week. And once again, thanks a lot to all of our speakers, and a little special thanks to Tom for getting up extra early to join us today. We really, really appreciate it, and I hope to see all of you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Great to see you. It's not that early here. Speak